Hey, it's Jake with the Intermark Group, the nation's largest psychology-driven marketing firm, and this is the CMO Minute. In this week's CMO Minute, we're going to discuss something that a lot of you are thinking about, and that's raising prices. We'll start with a data point. You might have noticed that consumers are growing increasingly concerned about inflation. In fact, searches for the term inflation in Google have tripled since the beginning of the year from years prior. What that lets us know is that everyone is expecting inflation. Now, that's likely because most companies are considering a price increase at some point this year. Now, things you need to keep in mind from a marketing perspective if you're thinking about implementing a price increase. Number one, you're thinking about how do we communicate said price increase? So you need to know this, come up with a plan, and then don't do it. The reason is most consumers give very little thought to your pricing and your brand at all. You give a lot of thought to it, and so you think consumers are aware of your pricing. Communicating a price increase from a marketing standpoint is typically a poor idea. One thing you can do, however, is focus on building your brand value. Brand is highly related to being price insensitive. When people love your product or your service, they become insensitive to the price overall, and that's where we want them to be. So, a lot of research is highly indicative that we need to be focusing on building a brand. Third is if your price increase is being driven by something outside of your control, like production issues or components that we can't get, or even an increase in scarce labor, you might consider a scarcity strategy. Now, scarcity strategy is simply communicating to our consumers that we may have trouble producing enough product. Now, you may be wondering, why would I do this? And it's because scarcity can be unbelievably psychologically powerful. When we can't get something, even if we didn't want it, all of a sudden we find ourselves craving it. We create a demand and increase the affinity level of our overall product. So it can be a great way to spur demand and spur brand affinity. Now, we're going to be discussing all of these topics related to price increases and impressions at this week's blog post at intermarkgroup.com/insights. If you have questions for me in the meantime, send me a note. Otherwise, we'll see you next week at the CMO Minute.